Gentlemen, on to last night's action. Nottingham Forest 1, Liverpool 1.
And what great action it was. We have to say that. It was a brilliant game.
I'll tell you something, a game of two halves.
Yeah, as they all are.
As they all are.
Yeah.
As they all are. And
We're footballers, they're footballers.
Yes,
it's a game of football.
Indeed it is. And we all love football. And if football doesn't exist, we'd all be frustrated footballers. I think it was Brian Robson that said that.
Right, okay.
But if it wasn't, then don't gun me down for it. But Liverpool came from behind to draw 1-1 at the City Ground. Jim Campbell, what did you make of the action?
I really enjoyed it. I watched it with you, which is always a pleasure.
Hence your enjoyment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that certainly added
Doubled the enjoyment, did it?
Veneer of fun.
Put a percentage on it.
You can only go to 100, remember?
Yeah, I'd probably go as high as 70.
70% more enjoyable because you're with
more
Marcus.
enjoyable.
It's the last thing he needs
He's
to do.
gutted I've not said 100. You see that? He's annoying. Because what you've tried to do there is if you tried to lead me, you've gone, remember, you can go for 100. And I've docked you because of that, because that is snide.
Oh, I see.
I enjoy games 70% less when I'm with you. So it's even.
All right.
There we go.
It
was lovely to see you though, mate.
Let's see if you're still saying that when we get out the studio. I wait for you at the back gate.
I'll be really scared. What, are you going to kiss me? You go twos on a tab with me?
Either way, you won't like it. Yes, it was a good game. I mean, you couldn't take your eyes off it.
No, absolutely. And Forest looked very, very comfortable for a long time, didn't they? I mean, when Diogo Jota comes off the bench, you just know he's going to score.
Yeah.
It almost feels inevitable. It's like putting a number on the score sheet as much as you're bringing a player off the bench.
It was an absolutely remarkable double substitution. Because I think that's the first time I've ever seen two players come on, both their first touches end up in a goal. Like the most notable substitution I can ever think of, for some reason it just comes to mind, is when Arrigo Sacchi took off Baggio in the '94 World Cup.
Oh, blimey.
Because of a sending off to bring another keeper.
Pagliuca was
who was their best player. But in terms of like impactful substitutions, I mean, that's obviously right up there. This was very impactful.
Yeah,
it was very
massively.
impactful.
Oh, it's he was the Egyptian chap in Africa Cup of Nations who used to come on and score. It was like that. It was like you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, I can't remember. Abutrika, was it?
Oh, possibly. But anyway, the point is that, as you say, Jim, when Jota comes on, Forest must think, we've got to watch him. We've got to watch him again. 22 seconds or something.
There is a feeling of inevitability about him, but it made the game all the more entertaining because, Liverpool are just, thumping away at that Nottingham Forest door. And Forest are so well set up for that. The entirety of their game really is to soak up that pressure and then just fly forward on the break. So as a spectacle, it made it just a really glorious watch.
I think they're the most organised team. I'm saying they're the best team, but I think they're the most organised team in the Premier League. I think when you see them without the ball, it's hard to think of a team. There's teams who are capable of being that organised, in games, like Brentford at home are obviously very good.
Amorim's Man United.
Yeah, not so much, although that is improving. But I just think Forest, they're so well drilled. Don't you, Andy?
Yeah, and I think it shows up in the fact that it's actually a bit of a strange Premier League this year. So a lot of teams are falling way short, especially big teams, and that is the area where Forest are at the moment, are falling well short of what you would expect in terms of rigour and organisation. So I think it stands out particularly in that. But of course, what you were saying about Brentford, so much of that home form has relied on scoring early and dictating the rest of the game that way. And the fact that Forest scored early in this game allowed them to dictate the rest of the first half in particular. I mean, like Arne Slot said afterwards, didn't he? We know that they're unbelievably strong on the counter-attack. The first one they score, and all of a sudden you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's a brilliant counter-attack as well. So efficient.
It is, and I think it's interesting when you go back to last summer and, there were a lot of strange transfer business. There'll be a lot of strange transfer business, I'm sure, in the next week and a half as well. But a lot of people around Newcastle or Newcastle fans were saying, why would we want to spend 40 million on Anthony Elanga? And do you know what? Ever since then, obviously he's been doing it for Forest reasons. It's nothing to do with Newcastle really. But it's almost as if if he'd wanted to say, this is why Newcastle wanted to sign me and this is why that I'd have suited them perfectly, it's like the perfect brochure. It's just he's just been brilliant this season.
It's a high risk, high reward strategy as well, isn't it? Because you are effectively you're inviting the best team in Europe, realistically, into your backyard and inviting them to attack you and having the confidence to just essentially repel it and play the game that way. And I think a lot of that comes down to the individual quality of those defenders. Like Murillo he's been brilliant for Forest since he's joined them. But yes, that moment where he took was it Mo Salah's foot? He just took the ball off of him.
Yeah.
He basically running the wrong way. He just put about 10 million quid on his value.
He was man of the match, and he made 18 clearances in the match, which was the most by any player in a Premier League game this season, breaking his own record this season, of course.
He's a delightful throwback. He's got a bit of the Pepe about him.
Can I say Ivan Cordoba?
Yes, you can, definitely. Absolutely. He bullied Diaz and Salah at the same time. and they're not like bad players, particularly Salah. Salah's having like a standout season.
Difficult to bully them.
And they're both players who run really directly at you as well, which is a real challenge for a defender, and he just stood up to it brilliantly. I think we should say, I think Liverpool should have had a penalty in the second half.
Just remind me of the incident.
There was a point where two Forest players kind of clattered into, I forget which Liverpool player.
Oh, that was Salah. It wasn't a penalty.
Yeah. I thought it was.
No, did you?
I think if two players foul you a bit, that's still a penalty.
I don't know.
Well, we'll take half a foul each to get away with it.
Is there a total?
Like that.
Is that why, if we're talking old World Cup references, is that why, what's his name, got sent off for Cameroon for fouling Kanija? If the other two hadn't had a nibble, it would have just been a yellow card.
Was it France's own man, be it?
No,
that was
he was a forward player.
That was a goal scorer, yeah. It's Benjamin Massing.
Massing,
he smashed Kanija so hard his boot flew off. It was an absolute assault.
It propelled him to Scottish football. That's what he did.
Yeah. He woke up and he was at Dundee. Yeah. Was he at Dundee? I think he was.
Kanija was with his shoes off.
Yeah.
He'd walked all the way there, Jim.
But I was a little bit surprised at how quickly the review happened. I have to say that. But I mean, and also I was a bit. I thought it wasn't a penalty, but I wasn't 100% sure. But luckily, I had the co-commentator say to me, "That's fine," and it wasn't. So,
I had one of those ones where if it's whatever the referee goes with, I don't think VAR would overturn it. We've talked quite a lot about this game so far without mentioning Matt Sells.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
And I take the point about Forest being very well organised, 1-0 up, and they sort of dig in and all that. But let's be honest, there were very, very nervy moments for Forest. And actually, on another day, Liverpool, with their quality, take one of those chances, or they put one of them away. But Sells in goal was absolutely brilliant.
Can we call him XLs?
We can.
Very nice.
I think the thing is, when he arrives, and this is why it's nice to have a reminder that occasionally professional recruitment departments know what they're doing, because
it is known to happen.
When they brought him in, occasionally, but when they brought him in, I thought this guy isn't even as good as Odysseus Vlachodimos. Why are they making such a big deal of a late move in the window to go get him? And you know, he was all right when he was at Newcastle, and he got a few little opportunities. Pretty good at Strasbourg. And the big deal was that they didn't really have a replacement for him, an experienced replacement for him. But the fact that they were going all in for him, I didn't really get it.
And he's 32 as well. He's no spring chicken.
Yeah, I think you can make the argument that he's been the best goalkeeper in the Premier League this season.
Living his best life, Andy.
He's been absolutely fantastic. And I guess the difference is, when you look at Vlachodimos, if you'd have taken them on their form at like Benfica and Strasbourg, for example, you're taking Vlachodimos every day of the week. But of course, being a goalkeeper for a team that's going to win the title, or is heading towards winning the title, and a mid-table team.
They're second, Andy.
It's a totally different job.
They're second. What's the difference between Benfica and Forest here?
yeah.
Forest are up there, mate.
I suppose you could argue that, although his form had already been good at that point, but he's making more saves than you would expect Vlachodimos to have made through the best bit of his career.
I understand what you mean. The brief is different.
It's a very different job. But of course, what you were saying about Murillo before, I think the interesting thing there is he's been great since he's arrived before.
And they love him there as well.
It's about the collectivity, because he's now got that absolutely, not just a good player next to him, but that absolutely perfect partner in Milenkovic.
Yeah, and they look after each other really well, don't they?
Is it a sort of a Terry Carvalho kind of situation?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. I think Murillo bust the skulls, and Milenkovic reads the contracts. That's what happened.
Marcus, I'd like to go back to what you said about the end of the game.
Tough cop, classy cop.
Yeah.
Well, you said, they had a few nervy moments, and I take what you mean, and I know that's a semantic moment. But I don't feel like the players felt nervous. You know what I mean?
The bloody fans did.
Of course, but there's a sense with Forest this season. We've seen it a few times before when you get teams who are sort of really, really overachieving, where there's just nothing to lose at this point. You know, it'd be very difficult for them to not have what you'd consider a successful season from this point now. Yeah. So there's a fearlessness to it.
They're also. In many ways, you could argue, and this was obviously Matt Sells makes saves. Liverpool are a good team; they had 23 shots or whatever. But Forest are pretty comfortable in that position, and the evidence for that is they're second in the league, and for average possession in the Premier League, they're 20th. Mm-hmm. No one has less of the ball.
And Jota's effort was Liverpool's first on target.
There we go.
So that they weren't just surviving; they were comfortable surviving.
I don't think it was. I get what you're saying, but I think you've gone.
What word would you like to use instead of comfortable?
Reasonably comfortable.
I comfortable surviving.
Okay, fair. All right. Okay, Andy. Okay. Once again, on a technicality, you're let off. But I think, you saw them when they tried to break in deep into that second half.
Baked.
They were. Yeah. I mean, it was hilarious. Like it was. I could relate to it. You know what I mean? That's what it was like. They go forward, the legs weren't working, there was misplaced passes and so on.
If Marinakis had come on and put a blanket over Elanga, you could have understood.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think
those silver blankets you get after the marathon.
I think that goes into the emotional tiredness of a game like this as well. Obviously, you get the cut and thrust of the Premier League, da-di-da-di-da. As you say, they're used to that kind of dynamic in a game. But against Liverpool, it's to the nth degree, and they were absolutely exhausted. I mean, even when ait-nouri came on, I thought, right, well, there's a fresh pair of legs. I mean, maybe not the most mobile of strikers, and even he had a bad touch and so on. And I think that comfortably surviving. I think that it would have been harsh on them if they'd have conceded a second, but only because of the season they're having, only because of the whole feeling around the club.
I see that. I mean, I loved Arne Slot's chat afterwards, where he's so personable, and he's like, "Oh, they've done brilliantly this season. I would expect them to stay up there if they continue having that completely clean injury record that they've had."
He was also
even his voice changing
on the touchline. He was regularly berating the fourth official and the referee for the amount of time Forest were taking to do things, which has become a bit of a kind of trope around the Premier League generally now.
Was he having a go at them because he couldn't turn around and have a go at the Forest fans who were singing, "We're in your head" and all this stuff?
The tune of "Zombie" by the Cranberries,
which was quite enjoyable, I thought.
I would also add, among all this chat, we kind of glossed over it a little bit, Forest never should have conceded that goal to Jota.
Well, he gets the two players he gets in between.
One lapse in concentration of the game.
Was it Murillo
defended that well, and you concede a goal like that?
Was it Murillo and Wood he gets in between?
Should have been two much bigger players than him. He should have been
That's the skill of Jota, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Nips in there.
Yeah.
I love that the replay could show the entirety of him coming on the pitch and scoring in one clip.
That was quite enjoyable.
I think the whole occasion around it was brilliant, though. It sort of underlined why it's so good having Nottingham Forest back in the Premier League. If they'd have the two captains had shared the 1980 European Cup or the 1982 European Cup afterwards,
there we go.
It would have seemed reasonable. And it's funny because we talk a lot, I think, about how the atmosphere at Premier League grounds has sort of gone sideways. And I was at West Ham last night, and you can, I don't know, atmosphere-wise, you can kind of take it or leave it, I suppose. But if you look at the older grounds that still exist, like Villa Park, and now like the City Ground, where the atmosphere is always banging. Yeah. It's such an enormous addition.
The
to
roar
when
Forest scored was crazy.
Yeah.
It was so audible on the TV. It's a ruthlessly efficient counter-attack. So few touches. Like the pass through for Wood, where he hasn't even got to break a stride, was amazing. It was a really, really good game.
I think it would have been quite something to see if that they had maybe a few more like-for-like reinforcements to come off the bench. And be able to still counter with some effect into that second half. But I get that this is a very particular game against a very particular side.
Yeah.
And that's why it was all really played in Forest.
And they've done the Premier League a favour, by the way, Forest, because I know it's still probably pretty likely Liverpool win the league. But if Liverpool had won last night,
that would be it.
I think so. Yeah.
They've done Arsenal a favour, even though Arsenal...
By going above them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true though.
Well, indeed, Jim, which feeds into the point I was going to say, that they've done Arsenal a favour, and yet Arsenal are just not willing to accept favours at the moment.
No, it's very stubborn, isn't it?
Very stubborn, and to be
we don't need any
admired,
help. We'll do it ourselves.
one might say. But for Liverpool, as you say, they carry on, don't they? They've still got that commanding lead. They've still got the game in hand.
And this is it. Like, they've had a little bit of a wobble, but they've still only been beaten once this season. So,
I wouldn't even call it a wobble, would you? I mean, drawing at home to Manchester United is a bit disappointing. A draw away to Forest when they were on top. I mean, I wouldn't say that.
Just they're dropping points where they previously weren't. That's all I'm
They've dropped 6 points in the last 6 games.
Yeah.
So, I mean, make of that what you will.
I will.
Yeah, good. You do you.
Make of this what you will. Jurgen Klopp, who once upon a time managed Liverpool, has said he'll host a garden party in Mallorca for his Liverpool players, or his former players, of course, if Man City are stripped of their titles.
Yeah, there's a point in this interview where he goes, "Oh God, I realise what headline I've just created," and here it is.
He'll have Nelson the dog with him, will he?
I hope so. Well. I do hope so. He said we'll have a parade in the garden as well. So how about that?
I mean, I'm assuming he lives in Mallorca then, does he?
He said he lives in
He's
Mallorca.
not just chosen that as a destination.
There is not a rich German alive who does not have a house on Mallorca.
Right, okay, good to know.
Yeah, he says that he spends... Well, he lives in Mallorca, but he doesn't know it that well because he's flying around the place, he said.
Right.
Yeah.
I quite like
He's not taking up flying.
Jurgen Klopp lifestyle sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, it's all
I mean,
right.
I wouldn't work for RB Leipzig, but
maybe that's why you work for RB. Maybe that's finally the justification. You go to Salzburg, you go to Leipzig, and you think, oh, it's lovely to be back in warm Mallorca.
yeah. Do they make you drink 3 cans of Red Bull a day?
Only when it's really hot there.
Because we're a Carabao family here, so
I think no, we're not.
It could be a problem. What are we?
Pete Donaldson would
Monster.
argue that
He's just trying to be different, isn't he?
Exactly.
You know, Jurgen Klopp's house does have to have one of those big Red Bull cans on it. That's part of the deal.
Yeah,
sadly.
nice. To drive one of those cars with a big can.
The last time I was at Salzburg, they had the most formidable stroke scary fridge in the press room of Red Bull products ever. Like even the stuff that like ginger ale. You get Red Bull ginger ale.
It's like the Carabao beer. It's like you never see these things, but
Carabao beer.
In the Carabao Cup games this season, there's been a Carabao beer advertised.
So it shows you what team I support. They're not in it long enough to know that.
We've seen the ad, we've not seen the product.
Exactly.
It's a self-perpetuating myth.
they would only get me if they created Carabao or Red Bull ice cream.
Or Carabao Fanta.
No, because I just have the other one. I would be willing to give the ice cream a go.
A Red Bull Maxibon. I'm in.
Oh, you see?
Yeah.
We've all got our price.
I've made it even more European somehow. The Maxibon.
Oh, dear.
I'd like to go to Jurgen Klopp's party in Mallorca, garden party. It sounds great.
It's a brilliant garden.
Oh, yeah, but it's massive.
Only if Man City are stripped of their titles, okay?
Yeah.
I'd like to go regardless.
I'm sure you would, Jim, and I'm sure even then you would be
I'll tell you what,
uninvited.
if Man City are stripped of their titles, he can host a garden party for his Liverpool players. If they're not, he can host a garden party for us.
Yeah, right. And we just remind him that it was a good time he had at Liverpool, despite not winning those extra titles.
Yeah, and it'll start at 12:30. And they get really pissed off.
Elsewhere in the Premier League last night, Chelsea drew 2-2 at home with AFC Bournemouth. Reece James scoring a 95th minute equalising free kick to rescue a point for the Blues. Lovely to see him.
In front
Lukey.
of T squared as well.
In front of them, all of them.
No, Thomas Tuchel, T squared.
Oh, right.
Tuchel, Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah.
That's his wrestling name.
I'll
obviously.
tell you what, it's lovely to see Reece James. When that went in, I thought, he's going to be dynamite.
I love that he's even taken that.
Same.
I think he was a striker in his youth.
I'm the captain. I'm taking the free kick. The goal of the night for me, Semenyo's goal was a beauty.
Was a beauty.
I'll tell you what, taking it right back to... I mean, we started the show off today
I know what you're going to talk
with
about.
Inspector Deckline from Protect Your Neck. Cole Palmer sitting the keeper down. Come on, that is old school.
beautiful.
That's lovely stuff. You don't see that enough these days.
No, you don't.
He loves to score a five-a-side type goal in midweek,
he
doesn't
does.
he?
Yeah.
That's his thing.
The only thing he can do more to endear himself to me more greatly would be to start going around the keeper.
Yeah, I like that.
Because it's one of the biggest mysteries of modern football.
Yes, that's right.
Is that goalkeepers come out a lot more than they used to.
Yeah.
Goalkeepers spend, if you looked at the average position of a top level goalkeeper now compared to 25 years ago, it would be very, very different. The keeper would be far further up the field. Yet, no one goes round the keeper anymore.
But you say that, I think if you look at the best or the most exciting players, the young English players in football, it all feels inspired by cage football or power league, where of course you can't go around the goalkeeper because you can't go in the area.
No, that may well be a fair point.
I
as
also feel like we don't see as many like screamers from distance. Kind of feels like that's more of a rarity these days as well. So what's going on there?
Well, that's just Kevin De Bruyne not having a particularly great season. Although, I mean, he played well, but we'll come on to him in a bit. But 2-2. Chelsea would feel that they deserved at least a point. I mean, even Iraola said after the game that they didn't deserve to win.
Would Mark Cucurella feel like he deserved a clip round the ear?
I think so. But the fact is, though, Bournemouth, it's another, I mean, the whisker away from winning. If it wasn't for Nottingham Forest, we'd all be waxing lyrical. Well, we asked, but we would really be focusing a lot more on Bournemouth. They're 7th.
They'd get all our wax, wouldn't they?
I think they would get an awful lot of it, but they're 7th, 3 points off 4th. I mean, well, 5th is good. They're 1 point off a Champions League place this season. And we're 21 games into this.
Yeah.
They are having such a remarkable season. And as I say, even when they're a bit below par, they can still draw and nearly win away at Stamford Bridge with the Chelsea side, who, OK, they haven't now won in 5, but they're still having a decent season and clearly have a better squad on paper.
And went 1-0 up as well.
Yeah.
You're looking at two teams who, with very different resources, are overperforming compared to expectation because they're incredibly well coached.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Bournemouth, as I say, when I saw them in the flesh against Fulham a few weeks ago, just so impressed how they work as a unit and how they swarm and do all these things.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be, to a team's credit. But they now have some individuals who will be coveted. They will do very well to keep the likes of Semenyo and Kirkesh, just to name a couple, I would have thought they'd keep them in this window. I think that would be particularly annoying for them and the neutral if they were to lose them. But come the summer, I mean, the price tag on those two, Semenyo in particular, will be enormous.
Evan Nielsen's a miss as well. He's going to be out for a while.
Yes.
I think the only thing that could endear me to a South Coast team that isn't Portsmouth anymore, than it already has, is them keep knocking Mark Cucurella about. That's endearing them to me greatly.
Yeah.
David Brooks just giving Cucurella a slap off the ball and getting away with it.
Well,
it was afters, wasn't it? Because Cucurella did the same to him earlier in the game.
Exactly. Then Cucurella ended up on the floor.
Do you think that's what happened? The referee came over to the monitor because it's extremely unusual to see it rejected after the referee.
Only time it's ever happened in the Premier League.
It's the first time in the Premier League that a ref has rejected a red card review when having a look at the monitor, and the first monitor rejection of any kind this season.
So do we think literally the referee has gone over to it and gone, it's Cucurella?
I hope so.
He looks funny down there.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Jim likes him.
I think he's funny. He didn't say he liked him. There is a slapstick element to him. I think he's a brilliant player.
Do you like him more or less than you like me and Marcus?
I prefer you two.
Yeah.
Because I know more about
the reason
you
why
both.
that is because I was in there.
Well,
ask him just about yourself.
Okay.
If you both start falling over more, that'll certainly put you further ahead.
Okay. I would happily play Mark Cucurella and you play David Brooks in a reenactment.
I just find him really entertaining.
He's a penis.
He is a penis, but he's a very entertaining penis.
Yeah.
More on that later.
Genuinely. Well, it wasn't given as a red card, it was given as a booking. Brooks seemed to be a bit miffed. He seemed to kind of do that thing where a player taps the referee on the torso when they get a booking as if to say, yeah, all right, fair enough, I'll take that. But then he was like a bit shaky of the head as he walked off.
Yes.
So I think the fact that it's the first time a referee has rejected a red card review when having a look at the monitor in the Premier League, I think a lot of people would think that should have been a red card. And
but the problem
Enzo Maresca certainly thought it was a red card.
Without getting too much of a deep dive on this, Enzo Maresca, of course he does. I mean, it's not a huge piece of news, is it? But the issue with VAR that's not considered enough is the fact that now you said that, which to me implies that VAR is refereeing games rather than the referee refereeing games. And you see that, maybe I'm seeing things, I don't know, but I watched a lot of FA Cup games last weekend and there was a lot of stuff that was let go. And you could say that's great because the referee's letting the game flow or because it's a different competition, it's a smaller team against a bigger team. The reason it's happening is because they're used to having VAR to back them up. And so they're used to saying, I'm not going to make a big decision here. I don't need to because I can get it rescued for me later.
That was inevitable, really, wasn't it, I think?
Well, it's happening. It's happening. I don't think people talk about it that much, though. And I think with this, the referees in that situation, the reason it's the first time we've had a monitor rejection is because the referee's letting the VAR referee the game for them. That's what I think.
Well, I don't know. Harry Maguire's certainly in favour of VAR, as he said. And therefore I am. Back to Bournemouth, unbeaten in their last 9 games.
Yeah,
brilliant.
How about that?
They've been fantastic. They've been really good. You're right to point it out because I think Forest have been the story. That's fair enough. Of the rest of the teams that who are overachieving, Bournemouth are absolutely up there. They're in great form.
And you could talk about them potentially losing players as you were before, Marcus, but I would feel pretty confident in them to recruit well going forward because what they're doing at the moment is the product of that, isn't it?
And the Premier League, you're right, Andy, you said at the top of this, is a bit of an old Premier League season at the moment. Yeah, it's worth kind of reiterating. Of the traditional, or not even the traditional teams, the teams that were around it last season, obviously Aston Villa forced their way in there. Man United are a big club, Spurs are a big club. Those three are kind of probably not going to do anything for different reasons. Leaves a massive window for a quote unquote non-traditional team,
especially if fifth is going to be a Champions League place.
Yeah, exactly.
There could be a massive surprise come the end of the season, which would fit the way this season is going so far.
I suppose the only kind of caveat to that might be that it could end up being Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Newcastle, which would be a bit boring. But it might not be that.
It might not be that. Coming up after this, Pep Guardiola gets aggressive with Stefan Ortega.
I've got major problems with it. For me, looking at that video, that cat hadn't done anything wrong.
Welcome back to the Football Ramble, everybody. Now, before we carry on with the Premier League action, how about this from Mark on Discord? Hello, Ramblers. I was just listening to the episode talking about the Bromley player scoring at St James's Park and how he should have an iPad on his mantelpiece permanently replaying the goal.
Yeah.
I live in Melbourne, where AFL is the main sport, and he could take inspiration from one of our players who, after winning the grand final a few years back, got a QR code tattooed on his foot, which when scanned takes you to a YouTube video of him scoring in that game. That is wonderful.
Yeah, and what skill from the tattoo artist.
Yeah. Really accurate. And he's also going to have to spend his life making sure that he maintains that link.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like that if that YouTube, I'll tell you what we should do. We should all go on the YouTube, find it, and then start issuing copyright claims. So it gets pulled out.
Oh, what a killjoy.
Yeah, I know.
What a killjoy. Manchester City drew 2-2 at Brentford last night.
They got pegged back, didn't they?
And I tell you what, Brentford nearly won it.
Yeah.
They nearly
Right
won
at the
it.
end.
That would have, I don't know what that would have done to Pep. Poor old Pepe. Brentford scored twice in the last 10 minutes to come back from 2-0 down. A bit of a throwback seeing Phil Foden scoring and Man City leading.
Yeah, two brilliant goals as well.
The first
really,
one,
really confident.
what a beautiful
First
volley.
one, would you call it a brush? Delicate brush?
It was a sort
Caress.
Of,
A caress, yeah. It was a
a
caress.
flying caress.
Yeah, it was very nice.
It was
Really
a whip and a caress.
It was a little bit
like a Friday night Andy Brassels.
crouching tiger, hidden.
And sometimes
Foden.
a Saturday morning.
Well, sometimes they carry over if there's...
Did you say crouching tiger, hidden Foden?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, because he was like in that
It
position,
was just,
wasn't he?
sort of floating through the air.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff from Phil Foden. But Manchester City, of course, have now dropped 14 points from winning positions in the Premier League this season. The joke is going round. Why should Manchester City not be given a dog? Because they can't hold on to a lead, Andy.
It's good.
Is what people are saying at the moment. But they're right.
Yeah, it's true, and yeah, it is increasingly uncomfortable watching Guardiola on the edge, isn't it? I don't. He's not quitting, but I almost wish he would quit.
And he should have gone in the summer.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about with the way the season has decanted at this point here.
Decanter season?
Yeah, definitely.
Decanted?
Ooh.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it's all written already.
Yeah,
it's all written.
you let it breathe.
Yeah,
you
that's
let
right.
You let it breathe before you drink it.
It was just decanter.
So you're saying that he should have seen the writing on the wall when it started to go to shit and then handed his notice in?
Yeah, because it's just so... The pressure on him's unbearable.
Sack him.
I realise he won't want to quit. They're not going to fire him, but he's having a terrible time.
But surely he wants to take the opportunity to turn it round and make the season at least kind of better than everyone's predicting it to be at the moment. Because this has been his most successful spell at any club, really, isn't it? Given the length of time he's been there and the amount of things he's won. So I'd be very surprised if he would kind of even consider leaving now, because
I don't think he will.
I think that kind of calcifies the kind of sadness of it if he leaves. He's surely fighting with everything he's got to try and turn this around.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is turning into Klopp's last season at Dortmund. Is what it's
Or his last season at Barcelona.
Yeah. Well, no, because they still won stuff in that. Like Dortmund were bottom of the table for most of it and finished 7th, which is the equivalent, given Manchester City's resources, of what they're doing at the moment.
No, because it's not that bad, because Manchester City, they're 6th. I mean, they're a few points off Champions
still
League.
in play in
Dortmund.
And given that they should be winning the league by a mile, that is pretty much the equivalent of what Dortmund did in Klopp's last season.
I mean, perhaps to compare is futile, but I mean, Klopp's last season, you talk about the bottom. I mean,
that's why I said I'm talking about it not being comparable in terms of league position, but in terms of the feeling you're getting from it, in terms of the fact that it's slipping out of his control and it has slipped out of his control. The fact that it's so far from expectation, if you weight it for resource, it's comparable, is what I'm saying.
Fine. I would say that the last season at Barcelona is also comparable. And again, we talked about it, that it's that chasing after self once you've kind of used all you can and it's kind of going. And as you say, Andy, sort of slipping away. I just find it remarkable that the fact that they're 2-0 up with not that long to go and they end up with that Bournemouth chance hanging on.
It's not a surprise anymore.
Well, no, it isn't a surprise. And that's the thing, is the comments from the managers after the game, I thought were quite revealing.
You could tell what by Thomas Frank's behaviour on the touchline during the game that he was like really pissed off as they were behind. Like he was like, this is a real opportunity. And I think you've also got to wait it. If you're talking about waiting things for different situations, you have also got to wait here that Brentford are a really good team at home.
Yeah.
And then look, maybe the context makes this
who have been bang out of form.
Sure, but maybe the context makes this a kind of irrelevant point. I hope it doesn't. If Brentford could come back from 2-0 down at home against anyone.
No, but they can. But the comments Frank made is after full time. Sorry, he said, I just said to the players in there, I was happy and proud of the performance. I think this is the first time in 4 years that over 90 minutes we've gone toe to toe with a top 3 club. Why is that? Because they believe they can.
Yeah, that is part of it.
They are his words.
I thought I was going to say because they're not a top 3 club anymore.
Well, they're a top 3 club. It's not a top 3 team at the moment. At the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It depends what you mean by top 3, I suppose.
Guardiola says as well, at 2-0, we had to close it out, but we don't have a specific player to defend a result in the box.
That's strange, isn't it? And
but I mean, look at the back, 3 of the back 4. Ake, Akanji, Guardiola.
Yeah.
They've done it. They've won it.
Yeah.
But all at Man City.
Yeah.
What is going on here? This is the thing. I keep hearing Man City fans and other people say, but it's the injuries. It's Rodrigo. Of course, those things make a difference. And I understand in September they were a different side. To me, this is a lot of things. As they say in aviation, the Swiss cheese effect. There's a bit of that going on. But I also think it is Guardiola. Guardiola to me, it's his magic wand has snapped.
He's not transmitting confidence to them.
No,
he's
not
saying something like that. And it also doesn't feel like a challenge to them. It feels like soul searching, doesn't it?
It does,
him kind of looking
and chasing after self.
There's definitely a navel gazing element to all of it.
Yeah,
because the talk of like, he goes and locks himself in his house for the whole weekend when there's a few days or whatever, trying to work for answers, and he's not getting any sleep
in his lab.
It's almost like it almost feels like a crazy old maths professor trying to work out a formula. Right?
But look at the way
that's fine when it's going well. It's just bringing out the worst of him now. But look at the way he's not been in this situation before.
Look at the way he was with Ortega after the game. Now I assume, I don't know, I'm sure if he's commented on this, I haven't seen it, but to me it looked like he was trying to G him up because Ortega gets a big hand for that Brentford second goal and it still goes in, and Ortega looked a bit forlorn after the game.
I thought it was him saying it's not your fault.
Yeah, indeed, but he's grabbing it and but he was, again, even that, we laughed about the whole Nathan Redmond thing a number of seasons ago and so on. This, again, to me, it's that more exaggerated kind of
Well, it's
Guardiola.
just the context. It's not the action, it's the context, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose. But I think going back to Jim's point is really interesting in terms of like he wouldn't want to leave it. And I think you're right, he wouldn't want to leave it. I'm saying what I think he maybe should do rather than what he will do. But I think in terms of leaving it somewhere, I think when you look at how they're looking at the transfer market, they're not looking for quick fixes. They're not looking for solutions of the problems for right now, are they? They're looking at setting the table for the next generation of
Which
City, wherever they
been
might
exceptional
be.
at, haven't they?
Well, but to take inspiration from Liverpool.
To do it mid-season, though, is quite interesting.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting that Pep Guardiola said that he was offered the chance to strengthen the team in the summer, and he essentially decided that he was happy with the players he had, and he thought they could keep going. So, they've essentially, it looks like they're going to have 3 players through the door very, very quickly. So they've essentially just accelerated the plans they had. Omar Marmoush might be a little bit reactive because of the season he's had, and obviously one of the most exciting and most productive attacking players in Europe this season is about to join City and will probably make a big difference. But it is very interesting to me there's no midfielder among those players.
Very interesting.
I would say that. I would say it's fine to sign those players. You and Andy obviously know much more about Omar Marmoush than I do, but you're talking about a manager whose real hallmark quality has been his ability to control games. And there's loads of other stuff going on. I like the Swiss cheese analogy as well. I think it's a really accurate one. But a big part of it is because they can't control games in midfield because of Rodri. And that's not the only reason, but it's part of it.
Yes.
And it's weird to me. Maybe he just thinks Rodri's so good he's like irreplaceable. But it's weird to me they're not kind of making a move to kind of strengthen that specific area. And I understand that they weren't up against much last weekend, but they had Gundogan and McAtee in there. And it was a bit kind of lethal weapon. Do you know what I mean? It was a bit kind of like, it was like, here's the legs. He'll go forward all day. He'll break forward. He'll also drop in. Gundogan's got so much experience.
I mean, that is.
It feels to me weird that he won't just play them again.
Because Gundogan does look too old for this shit, though, right? Isn't that the problem?
But McAtee's like, I don't think it's right to say that he couldn't play again now. He's definitely young enough to, and I just don't understand why.
But I mean,
I guess that's where those signings lean into in terms of, we talked about the long term, but in terms of now, they've looked leggy all season, and that is something that those three will change.
A side who have Haaland up top, Savio, De Bruyne, Foden behind him, Kovacic and Bernardo Silva in front of Ake and Akanji, or Taylor and goal. Why is that side not capable of shutting out 10 minutes of football?
Yeah, definitely.
Why is it not capable? Give Brentford all their dues. We know that they've been very exciting. There is no decent reason why that team cannot shut out the last 10 minutes of a football
match. And when Visser scored in the 82nd minute, you see his face, he's a bit like, finally, grabs the ball, runs back as quick as he can, because they think, right, this is on.
Because of the amount of shots Brentford had.
Yeah.
Like Brentford, they deserved something out of the game. And Visser as well, when he gets the ball, shows lovely feet. How much time did he have?
So much time.
How much
he
time?
He had the freedom of the penalty
6 yards out?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, 2-2, good game, enjoyable. Elsewhere in London, another enjoyable game for some. West Ham 3, Fulham 2.
Battle of the Hams. Yeah. It's the Ham derby.
It is the Ham derby.
They should have done the other Portland Timbers. They slice a big off the log when someone scores.
Yeah.
Have a big joint of ham.
One each.
I tell you what.
You've always got
one slice per goal.
You've always got a bit of ham left over after Christmas as well, don't you?
Always, actually, yeah.
I think we can agree there was no excuse. But Fulham's performance, there were moments where they were kind of hamming it up, you could say, in defence.
Tried to warn you on Monday, Marcus, you wouldn't listen. You wouldn't have it.
Well, I said I
Play
fancied...
the tape.
I said...
I haven't got the tape, I haven't organised it.
I said I fancied Fulham to win this game, and really they should have done. Andy, you were at the game.
And they really should have done.
Yes.
I mean, I think
they've embarrassed themselves and me.
The thing is, the first goal, Fulham were on top of the game, and then they give away the first goal with that loose pass from Pereira.
Having missed some chances, Fulham.
Yes.
So they should be in front.
They'd hit the crossbar by that point. Harry Wilson had hit the crossbar by that
Lovely
point.
finish from Carlos Soler, has to be said.
It was an opportunity that he absolutely snaffled.
Yeah.
But you give away that goal and you think, okay, that can happen. And, West Ham had a good 5-10 minute spell on top of that and got on top of the game. Fulham get back into it in the second half, and they look like the team who's going to score next. But after you've conceded that daft first goal, how you get to the point where you concede that daft third goal, it's ridiculous. You cannot concede. I can't think of the last time that a team that wasn't Southampton conceded 2 goals like that in a Premier League game.
It's unlike Leno to do something like that.
Yeah. For all evening, look more together as a team as you would expect. Now, look, I've heard some West Ham fans say, well, I think maybe they wouldn't have won that game under Lopetegui, West Ham, because they at least knew how to cling on. Look, I know it's at the beginning and you've got to build towards something, and he's got a load of injuries, particularly in the forward area at the moment. And for what it's worth, he brought on Ings at exactly the right time, because that caused what was the winning goal, wasn't it?
He ended up playing Paquetá as a false nine, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was a centre forward.
He plays a full centre forward.
He was a centre forward. He's played there for Lyon before. He had one particularly really good game against PSG as centre forward, in which he scored. So he can do it. But
maybe that's a way to circumvent the West Ham striker curse. Playing midfielder.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the thing. I mean, you do feel they're going to have to go out and get someone this January, but there's just what Potter's battling against is not just the fact that this season's been underwhelming so far, and the season before has been underwhelming so far, and even the season before was underwhelming in a Premier League sense under successive coaches, but the fact that there's just such an incredible tension, and it's difficult to generate atmosphere in that stadium. And so, once a couple of passes don't hit, the atmosphere dies. There's lots of murmuring and groaning from the stands. I'm not blaming West Ham fans for that, but it's difficult.
Fulham really could have really stamped their authority on this game and really got those groans and moans going, because you take a few chances, you go 1-up, 2-up, don't make those mistakes. You come away winning 2 or 3-1, something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, funnily enough, the chances they did take, they didn't mean to take.
Well, indeed, yeah. I mean, Iwobi scores from 2 crosses. And even then, Adama Traore misses a glorious chance to make it 3-3.
God. So, on Iwobi, firstly, most players won't do that once in their career. He does it twice in the same game, essentially scoring with a through ball, which is really impressive. If the goal was, let's say, 6 times the size and the point of the sport was to miss it, Adama Traore would be the Lionel Messi of that world. It's ridiculous at this point. And it's not the first time we've said this, is it?
But there is hope for him, because, I mean, there was a period of time, as I'm quite fond of reminding Marcus, where Alex Iwobi's contributions in terms of his final product was appalling, and now it's really good. Like the positives from Fulham last night, they're Alex Iwobi and Anthony Robinson related mostly. Both made a massive contribution.
Yes.
Jimenez is unlucky not to score. Wilson's unlucky not to score. It could have gone either way, that game, so that's great. But it's very difficult to not roll your eyes when you see Adama Traore on the ball. It's like, okay, great. Yeah. It looks good. You're going to go somewhere, but the end of it's going to be invariably abysmal.
Mm-hmm. He looks like a brilliant athlete from a different sport, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And Fulham are 4 points away from Bournemouth, and I think we could be talking about them in similar terms if they got out of the habit of losing games like this, which they could so easily have won. There's been quite a few of them this season.
There have been many of those games, I think, with Fulham where you've thought it's a missed opportunity. Like you say, you could easily tack 5 points in their total without really changing anything that they've
It's
about
done being clinical,
so far.
and I think it's that lack of clinical edge at times. Even though I think Jimenez has had all in all, a pretty decent season, especially he's 33 now as well. He's really stepped it up and is playing some of his best football since, his halcyon days back at Wolves and so on, before the injury and whatnot. But yeah, just from a Fulham point of view, like, oh my God, not even a point. But from West Ham, though, that is the kind of thing that Graham Potter needs. An enormous slice of luck.
Exactly. Any win's a win, because I think if you look at him going into these first 2 home games, they've got home games against Fulham and Palace. And when you think of the squad that West Ham have got generally, when they're all fit, the stature of the club and where they're trying to go, the fact they're recent European trophy winners, they will be going into these games against Fulham and Palace with a new manager, with the fans expecting, right, we should be beating these. Whereas really the way they've played over recent weeks doesn't really imply that they have the right to think that. Yeah. So it's a difficult position. So to get that win over the line any which way, look, I think they're definitely more organised under Potter, even though they're at the very start of
they're running more.
Yeah,
I mean, Potter cited that. He said, actually, we force them into mistakes. I mean, perhaps he would say that. But the fact is, under Lopetegui, you could see the drop-off with the players.
Yeah.
They were not inspired under him, certainly towards the end.
They were in a position, they put themselves in a position to receive the luck.
Yes.
I think is the way to put it.
Indeed. All right, coming up after this, Lazio have fired their Eagle handler. Oh, dear. Yes, why are we talking about Lazio's Eagle handler? Well, because he's now more of a penis handler.
What an intro.
Yes.
I'll tell you what.
This well-storied football club in Italy have fired Juan Bernabe, the Spanish falconer who handles the team's eagle. This decision was made after Bernabe underwent penile implant surgery, which is, of course, as it sounds, a knob enlargement.
I'm not sure it is, actually. I think it's a little pump to aid with stiffness.
Yeah, which...
To aid with tumescence.
Yes.
Marcus. to achieve full tumescence among men of a certain age.
Yeah. I haven't heard you say that for ages.
There's a lot of stories that break in football throughout the season here on the Ramble that we are very happy to talk about. There's not been one better than this.
Nope. I've never known Pete Donaldson so gutted before. Yeah. being not on the roster for today.
He keeps going, they went in through the stomach. I can't stop thinking about it.
Oh, the Lazio.
It's not his accent. But you get what you get.
But they fired him not because he had the surgery. It's because he shared the results on social media.
Marcus, if I may quote from the story.
Please.
Bernabe posted photos of his newly fitted penis from all angles.
All angles.
Can I just say, this is the most Lazio thing ever. You want to do a fascist salute, fine. You want to be far right, fine.
Yeah.
You want to show your cock on social media, not fine.
Yeah.
Performing a fascist/Nazi salute after a game against Milan, suspended. Showing a picture of your medically enhanced penis, sacked.
Yeah, I mean,
He's also openly praised Benito Mussolini and Franco. Like, there's no ambiguity.
No.
Yeah, and you can't even accuse him of saying, well, maybe he. I mean, obviously, you can't accuse him of this. If I'm bending over backwards to try and find an absolute modicum of great sympathy for this man, and say, well, okay, Mussolini, you're talking about because he's from Spain, and then he goes, and I like Franco as well, and I say, oh, God.
I like that he's so committed to Lazio that he wants to be able to, on demand, get his penis to do a fascist salute.
But I think, you say he's committed to Lazio. Remember, he was also fired as the falconer at Benfica because he used to handle that. And can I just say, from when I first worked at Benfica regularly, I can't tell you that is so strange when you see a man in his 40s, as he was then.
He's 56 now.
What he used to do is you get the eagle to fly around the top.
It is incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Was he there when I went with you?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And they have a little lectern on the pitch on the centre line. With the Benfica crest on it, and the eagle lands on it, and this guy, who is dressed in full kit, shorts and socks as well, as the eagle lands on the lectern, he gets on his knees and punches the air. Now, he was fired from Benfica because when he renegotiated his contract, he went to the club and he said, yeah, every bit of merchandise you sell with an eagle on it, I'm going to have a cut of that. We're talking about one of the most famous football clubs in the world that have a fucking eagle on their badge.
Yeah. Wow.
And he was surprised when they sacked him.
He said, seriously, I need a cut of that because I've got some penis surgery coming up.
He's been saving for a long time. So anyway, he goes to Lazio and he had a terrible, terrible debut at Lazio. His eagle...
He did or his eagle did? Who was at fault?
Oh, well, I think it's a team effort.
Okay.
Leave no man behind.
Hey, we're not blaming the eagle for any of this, surely. Eagles get a rough time in football in general. That Charlton fan went to jail for trying to punch the Crystal Palace one.
Well, that's where this fella's going to end up next.
Well, I was about to say, surely Palace are the only ones who can save this man.
On this debut, essentially, the Eagle, now renamed Olympia for Lazio purposes, settled on the top of the Stadio Olimpico because it wasn't used to it. It wasn't the Stadio de Luz and wouldn't come down. So obviously the Roma fans very much enjoyed this. They spent the rest of the season singing "Where's Your Pigeon Gone," etc., etc.
Didn't they have that banner as well that translated to "fuck you and fuck your eagle"? Nice and succinct, that, isn't it?
Oh dear.
Is it the same eagle as the Benfica one? He didn't get a new one.
Yeah, he took it with him. Yeah.
Wow.
Eagles
I'm taking my eagle and I'm off.
They're incredibly dignified animals who don't deserve any of this.
No,
I mean, as I explained to you before, because they're very modern, Benfica then, after Bernabe left, switched to a 2-eagle rotation system.
Nice.
Oh, how European.
So they have them on different weeks. You have...
one stays, one goes.
Yeah, exactly. There's one that does really flash, like spins around the top, and one that just does a very simple box and then lands.
Classicist.
Yeah, one that's your Xavi, one that's your Iniesta.
So these kind of
Vittorio and Glorioso.
What is it about these right-wing kind of men who are all the same? Because he looks like Dana White and Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Two very famously right-wing men.
Maybe it's their background and their family background.
Or maybe they're also angry because they've got quite severe erectile dysfunction.
Well, Burnaby, he defended his decision to publish the videos, of course. But as you say, Luke, he got sacked over this, not doing, just to reiterate, not for doing fascist salutes, Mussolini chants, and other things of such nature. But he said, when defending this, he said, "Nudity is normal. I grew up in an open-minded naturist family." They sound like a lovely bunch.
Open-minded.
Which it does betray his actions right now, perhaps. But he also said, "It was a wonderful operation. I did it to be as fit as I was when I was young. My erection is natural. But with this device, I press a button that allows me to perfectly control both the erection and the timing."
Can someone else push it?
Well, presumably, Jim. I'd like to think...
I love him going, "I don't need this, by the way, everyone."
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm only posting these photos. Yeah, exactly. It's that energy. I'm only posting these photos, by the way, to get a discount on the surgery, presumably, to advertise it, which has backfired because he's lost his job. But it's almost like they used to say that to get a loan from a bank manager, you have to go into the bank and claim that you didn't need one.
Yes.
Right. It's like that, isn't it? He's saying, I don't need it, but I'm just doing it anyway.
I love the thought of
the
pressing...
Pelé of Falconers.
Yeah.
I love the thought of pressing the button. He goes from 0 to 60 in like just a second.
Are you telling me, though, that if Pete Donaldson had a button on him, where if you pushed it, he'd just suddenly have a stonker?
What?
Yeah. Like you wouldn't be tempted, just like, bang,
Can you hack the button?
Pete referred to erections last night on WhatsApp as a honking boner.
But maybe because he's such a showman, as we know now, we've left in no doubt that he's thinking, oi, you employ me and I'll give your Eagle something to land on.
He's got nowhere left to go. He's got nowhere left to go.
Well, no, that would be something, though. If the Eagle was swooping around, he got his old boy out, pressed the button, and the Eagle landed on his chopper, you'd be thinking, bloody Nora. That
very
is
good.
It would be very good. Something we could all get behind. Right. Tonight, everybody. Yeah, there's a photo of it.
fucking hell.
Hold up to the camera. I'm going to get banned off
Like
YouTube.
the Leaning Tower of Pisa, that.
You have to... You'll have to blur it out.
Leaning to the right, though, Jim. Tonight, it's the North London derby. Can Arsenal claw back a couple of points in the title race, if there is indeed a title race going
3,
on?
ideally. A couple would be weird.
Well, because Liverpool drew, didn't they? They got a point, so it would only be 2. Both sides played 120 minutes in the FA Cup on Sunday. Will they both be too tired?
I think they'll be equally tired from their various endeavours.
One of them played a team they really should have beaten. It should be embarrassing, and the other team played Tamworth.
There we are. Well done, well done. Gabriel Jesus sadly will not be playing in this game because he suffered an ACL injury.
That's absolutely gutting for Jesus as well. It's the other knee to the one that he injured at the 2022 World Cup. So it's hard to know whether that's a good thing for him or a bad thing. Is it 2 bad knees now? It's going to be a long recovery. It's a terrible thing for him, terrible thing for Arsenal. I'm really, really gutted for him.
If he wants to speak to someone about how difficult it is to have 2 bad knees, I'm always available.
You're always available. Better news for Arsenal is they're working on a move to sign Martin Zubamendi from Real Sociedad. Much coveted player, of course, been linked with Liverpool and Man City, which does make me think Arsenal won't get him.
Yeah, it's a long time for that to be gazumped, isn't it? And I think clearly the news has been released to just sort of quell a bit of disquiet. But if they can pull it off, and it obviously looks positive from this point, then that's a fantastic signing and one that will be very, very needed with Thomas Partey and Jorginho probably, and hopefully moving on in the summer.
He's going to have an incredible choice, isn't he?
He is.
Can you think of the last player who was able to choose between, say, Arsenal, Liverpool and Manchester City in a transfer window?
Andy Carroll. Now, a man who made a very controversial choice, Sol Campbell, has been featured...
What, to run for Tory mayor?
In an advert. Well, I mean, you know...
you don't have to limit to singularly controversial choices.
You interpret it as you will. He's featured in an advert encouraging people to switch to Google Pixel. He said, big moves pay off. I'll tell you what.
If you're Ange Postecoglou ahead of that semi-final at Anfield, you're showing them that, surely.
Yeah.
That if you haven't seen that advert, I'm sure many of you have, like, you have to say it's magnificent.
Yeah.
You really do.
It would be... It's a really good advert in terms of how it's done.
Well acted.
But I just think it's... The only thing that holds it back is just how weird Sol Campbell is.
Yeah, but I mean...
Oh, you have to suspend disbelief for a little bit. It turns out he's Elvis. If someone else writes the script, he's great.
Yeah, okay. A load of Arsenal fans on Twitter were absolutely loving it. I saw that. I particularly liked the reply of a Spurs fan who had in his bio, just fed up of everything to do with Spurs, said, replied, who is Sol Campbell?
There we are. Yeah. Will he be guest of honour tonight, Jim, do you think?
He might well be. That'd be fun, wouldn't it, before the game?
Yeah.
Like waving his Google Pixel around at away fans.
Oh, about
Don't wave your Google Pixel around too much, you might lose your job.
There we are. He's got a button that waves his... Anyway, let's move on.